Ah, yes, the master of the skies, Tiktaq'to. What an adorable little flying skink. He's very, very cheap. You can only take him flying, but base cost, I think, is like 600-ish. We'll have to check that. This replay from its current year. He's got Tiktaq'to leading the way, of course. Does him have him somewhat kitted out here with the Mask of Heavens, Blade of the Ancient Skies, both of which will give some buffs to flying units. One just to himself. Activatable, 15 melee attack, 20% base and armor-piercing weapon damage, and then this, 23 armor and 10 melee defense, constant for all flying units in the area of effect. These Colossadon Hunters are going to take advantage of that, up to 68 armor and 40 melee defense, with their Frenzy, of course, 138 weapon strength, 15 anti-large bonus, 62 attack. Great stuff. Up against the Empire, we've also got plenty of skinks, some stalkers, 3 stalkers, 5 cohort with Javs, 3 Red Crests, including the cohort of Sotek, and a couple of Saurus cavalry here, Cold One Riders, plus Skink Priest, Lore of Beasts, Karl Franz, going to be leading the Empire force up against them, Pterodon Riders as well, one in each corner. Got some Empire Knights making their way forward currently to try and push away these Stalkers, some Huntsmen, Flagellants, Sigmar's Sons, and Halberdiers, so relatively expensive in terms of infantry as Empire standards go. The Empire Knights are going to smash those Chameleon Stalkers somewhat. They don't get the best charge in there, but pretty decent damage, especially on the one in the center. Karl's going to drop a quick terror route, so they are running for the hills. But so far, Tiktaq'to and his Colossadon Hunters just biding their time. Up flying over the top of the hill here, we've got these Huntsmen in position, but the Lizard Cavalry now moving in. I didn't talk too much about Cold One Riders during Cavalry Week. I talked a tiny bit about them. I mean, they are lower model count, but at 850 points, they actually trade very well with Empire Knights because of their armor piercing. So that's okay. They're going to get into a little blocking engagement there somewhat. Cohort of Sotek also just kind of occupying the center, but we're missing the main event here. Karl Franz going after those Pterodon Riders, all of a sudden gets caught by the Master of the Skies, and all these Colossadon Hunters are going to get a nice surround in here. We'll keep the health bars up. You guys can see just how fast Franz gets absolutely melted here. Just destroyed. Stand your ground, absolutely doing nothing for him. Huntsman fire also just not enough. Earthblood comes in far too late, and the Emperor drops from the skies. Beautiful stuff. People forget just how devastating Tiktaq'to can be, especially with the Colossadon Hunters. I mean, that combination in and of itself is like 2,500 points, so you would expect them to trade very well, even against expensive targets like Karl, but that was pretty remarkable. Now all the skinks just assaulting on all fronts here. We've got the Red Crests having mopped up a bunch of Huntsmen and such in the backline, just a lot of melee infantry. Flagellants are taking the high ground, though, managed to secure this position here. Some Empire Knights also in a position to try and spring these Huntsmen loose from those Pterodon Riders. Nice burning head as well, going to roast out some more of the skink infantry there. Cohort of Sotek, though, won't rout. Neither will the Sigmar Sons, so Tiktaq'to and his Colossadons will dive down here onto the ground, try and take down the Sons of Sigmar, which, of course, they will definitely be able to. A lot of unbreakable Empire units on the field, so they'll continue fighting for some time. We've also got these Halberdiers relatively healthy. The Red Crests are countering very nicely these Empire Knights, though, as they attempt to charge back in, break those Huntsmen loose. I like the pick of the Huntsmen here somewhat, but at the same time, the Empire army is just a little bit narrow. Really, like, you need some, probably cut a couple of Flagellants for just some Spearmen, give you a little bit more numbers of stuff, ability to protect. But anyway, nice Flock of Doom here, hitting a bunch of the Empire infantry there. Empire Knights and Flagellants fighting together. Big old Curse of Onrare, looks like it's going to go down for Lizardmen, debuffing all of the remaining Empire troops here. So you can see the area of effect bug has been fixed currently on the live patch. Previously, that probably would have hit these Flagellants and the Halberdiers, but I'd still think, given the very large area of effect and just the great overall, impact of Curse of Onrare, I do think even after the area of effect nerf, like Curse of Onrare, Flock of Doom is still going to be a pretty viable loadout for Lore of Beasts. Even with the area of effect changes, I do think you will still see that as a pretty common kind of pick together. Another Burning Head, going to try and finish off some more skinks. Does overrun into some of the Empire forces, though. Tiny bit of damage on those Flagellants. But the Flagellants are not going quietly into the good night. They've actually managed to combine with the Halberdiers to mop up a lot of this sector here. The Lizardmen largely relying on their expensive mobile units at this point. Empire Knights actually catching up to Cauldron Riders, trading reasonably even. Once the Enrage hits, they will get, you know, a little bit more angrier, and they'll probably beat the Empire Knights, but essentially these two units are just going to trade here, more or less. We'll see. Going to be very, very close. We do have some Stalkers coming back here, though, and of course Tiktaq'to himself being so healthy is a huge problem. 300 weapon strength, 75 charge, up to 420 weapon strength while he's in the air, getting that little benefit of the, oh, did I say it was activatable? It's actually constant, just only while he's flying. Master of the Skies, of course, also recharges if he's flying. 40 melee defense, puts him up to 100 melee defense. Completely ridiculous. Granted, he's super squishy, about 3,000 HP base, and, you know, not a lot of armor, very little armor. Only 53, even with that constant AoE buff. So squishy for sure, other than the fact that he can get up to 100 melee defense. But still some Stalkers, still some Pterodons. Skink Priest also fighting still. Those Flagellants are definitely giving it their best, but there's just so few of them left at this point that a lot of the Empire forces that aren't unbreakable are going to start to want to rout. There's really just this one healthy unit of Flagellants. The rest of them are currently getting mopped up by various Skinks. Very nice. Got the cohorts in here, got the Stalkers in here. Stalkers look absolutely amazing, I have to say. The Pterodons as well. Another Flock of Doom there to hit these Flagellants, and the Halberdiers. Halberdiers not wanting to rout yet. Their leadership's actually doing fairly solid because of the Bright Wizard. The Jade Wizard also just getting harassed now by Tiktaq'to. But we'll fast forward a little bit through this late game mop-up as the Colossadon Hunters come finish off that Empire Knight, and looks like Empire's going to throw in the towel. So very fun game. Big thanks to Current Year for sending that one in. Always a good time to see Tiktaq'to. And even though he himself didn't get that much value, he definitely juiced up the Colossadon Hunters to be able to just tear Franz to shreds. I mean, he only got 24 damage value, so that is very painful. Credit to the Empire player here, though. Burning Heads keeping it close. Roasting out a lot of those Skinks. For me, if you're going to bring Karl, though, I think you want to go with Regrowth rather than Earthblood. Like, I would take the Bright Wizard with just Regrowth, specifically for healing only Karl. Flagellants do pretty decently here. Yeah, actually very decently in certain cases. The Empire Knights also contributing some pretty good value. 1,000, 1259, up against Skink builds. I mean, their armor certainly helps them. You don't need a ton of charge bonus to get through low melee defense and armor of Skinks, so they'll do just fine there. Huntsman, a little bit of a mixed bag. One of them gets canned, but the other two do end up actually paying for themselves. But obviously, just losing an expensive, you know, power character like Franz so early in the battle, very impactful here for the Lizardmen. Red Crest do a pretty decent job. Javelins also kind of providing some extra numbers and some decent value as well. Pterodon Riders, decent. And one of the Cauldron Riders actually trades very well. In this specific matchup, Cauldron Riders trade great into Empire Knights, so it is one matchup where you, even still with the issues with remaining with Cavalry, you will still see them occasionally in this matchup. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. That's it for today. I guess we can kind of tie things up a tiny bit with Tiktaq'to. Not really a lot much else to say here. I've talked about him in previous videos. Basically, yeah, a few advantages. He's dirt cheap, fully kitted down, 800 points. Yeah, maybe I said 600 earlier, but even like fully kitted up, he's still not expensive at all. I mean, barely 1,500 points, and he will be able to punch up against other flying characters specifically very well. And of course, his AoE buffs synergize great with Ripperdactyls, with Quaddles as well. You know, given that Quaddles' sort of stats for the cost are somewhat lacking, that extra melee defense and armor from the Mask of Heavens, I mean, it puts them up to 93 armor, which is actually pretty good. An extra 10 melee defense as well. 58 melee defense is on par with something like, what is that, the Phoenix? So, and I think in campaign as well, you can literally get 0 upkeep Waddles, which is just awesome. So, definitely a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I know I sure did. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.